for the novelty.
All right, Rocky Prestige Kicks here, back for another episode at the prestigious major sneaker boutique in Georgetown, Washington, D.C. And I'm here with Duck, the owner, operator, and legend in the game. What's going on, brother?
You forgot the janitor and all that other stuff, you know?
Not only is he the owner major, I mean, I consider us.
I clean shoes.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
You do it all, right?
Yeah.
How you we've been talking about this for a while because you had the location across the street,
Yes.
smaller joint.
Yep.
You're in the bigger digs now, man. How you feeling this?
Well, I mean, we outgrew our original spot, years ago. But, just like any other business decision, it takes time to figure out the right formula, right? Yeah. So, it's hard to find a space in Georgetown that actually has good enough front of the house and also enough space in the back of the house.
Like storage or something.
Yeah, because I mean, anybody who worked in the sneaker business, even if you worked as a clerk in Foot Locker or what have you, you know how big that warehouse is.
No doubt.
You have to have sizes and sizes and sizes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you go to a place like a Foot Locker and you have 100 pairs of sneakers or so out front. So imagine all the sizes for each pair. I never even thought of that until just now.
Yeah, no, we have the same thing. We have 150 styles that we display at any given time. Sometimes when we run out of room, we'll have to edit it out. We'll have to do some, donate, whatever. But we have to do that to keep the floor fresh.
Right.
But the fact is, things in the back, they don't go anywhere. So
Right.
you just have to, have a good system.
Right.
And that's one of the critical, problems that we had with the older spot was we're running out of space. Especially with the market growing, and we had to stock smaller sizes, we had to stock bigger sizes. So it went from being 8 to 13 business to 4 to 14 business.
Right. Right.
So
yeah, because we did the Souls for the District.
yes,
Big part of that, y'all sponsored that. You donated 100 and something pairs?
almost 200.
Almost 200
Yeah.
pairs of sneakers from and all from the little storage upstairs.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I didn't even know you guys had.
Yeah.
So, but let's fall back a little bit. We push forward. Let's talk about you a little bit, man. So, where are you originally? Where were you born? You know what I'm saying? Where you from, man?
Man.
Let's let the people know who Duck is, man.
Man, look, I probably don't look that old, but I lived in different continents. I was originally born in Korea,
Okay.
South Korea. Not no crazy North Korea stuff. South Korea, so I was born in South Korea. I came here when I was 12.
Oh, okay.
Came to California, and I was raised in California until I finished college.
Oh, word. Okay.
Yeah, and I took my time going through college. 5-year plan. To try to preserve about half of my brain cells. So after that, I was fortunate enough to get into business school at Georgetown. So I came to DC. I mean, I had a number of cities in the East Coast that I wanted to kind of move to and think about going to school there. But I fell in love with DC because I love music, I love R&B, I love hip hop.
We're going to get into all that. Hold on.
Okay.
Because we could be here, like I said earlier, we could be here for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Talking about, but let's talk about your childhood. And were you in San Francisco?
In the Bay Area, Central California.
Okay, so your childhood coming up, did you have siblings and stuff?
No, I was pretty much like an only child because my brother was much older than me, and he stayed back in Korea.
Oh, okay.
So he didn't come until much later in life. Actually, probably he came here when I was 15 or 16.
Oh, okay.
So he had to graduate from college, finish his military service, all that stuff. But when he came here, he wanted to do an entrepreneurial venture, and he really didn't know what he wanted to do. So I'm 16 years old, and I'm like, you want to do a record store? Because I know you like music. You're like a walking encyclopedia of music.
This at 16?
Yeah.
Nice.
So we started a record store, and I helped him run it when I was 16.
That's crazy. So and that kind of got you into music, which we'll get into that in a few minutes. So college you went to? What did you major in?
I went to Cal State Chico,
Okay.
which was at the time, and when I was in school in 1986, it was rated #1 party school in the country by Playboy.
By Red Bull, you said?
No, by Playboy. Red Bull did not
right.
exist.
Yeah, okay.
1986, Red Bull didn't exist.
Very true. Far. #1 party city. You indulge in that, I assume.
Of course.
That's part of the reason why I didn't go to college. I knew what I was going to do.
Right.
My parents, I was going to waste their money like that.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you how you attained the entrepreneurial spirit, but you had it at 16.
Yeah, I mean, at 16, I started a record store with my brother, and I was a DJ, so I kind of used that connection to reach out to other DJs. And in about 2 years before I left to go to college, we amassed a really good following with the DJs all the way from San Francisco on down. So, for any like hip hop record, house record, like anything that would be coming out of New York, Chicago, where like you needed somebody who was in the know to like go get them, I was the guy. Like I was cold calling record labels. This is before the internet.
That's hardcore right there.
You know what I'm saying?
Footwork.
Lot of work. And a lot of sending people, like wiring people, Western Unioning people money that I ain't never met before,
And trusting it. So, did you? All right. So this is really getting to where I want to be. That record store and those relationships you built. Did you really get a presence from the local hip hop scene out there?
I mean, there was no real local hip hop scene. It was like me and my friend. This is in like the late 80s.
This is the late 80s.
Yeah, late 80s. So
Too Short never come out until when did Too Short come out?
actually, I met Short when he came to my record store on a weekend, driving his. I think he was driving like his Suzuki Samurai or something.
Was he selling out the truck at that point?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he said, make the check out to Taj Shah. That's my government. That's how we rolled.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I was one of the first retailers to sell all that stuff.
It was all local back then.
Yeah. And there was a system in place in the Bay Area called. There was a company called City Hall Records, and City Hall used to sort of press and distribute all the local acts that they met on the street, right? And they were out of like Marin County. And those guys were really making a pretty good racket for themselves doing that. So, they didn't work any records on radio. Radio, so you got to remember.
They wasn't really catching on the hip hop like that,
I mean, KSOL back there, like my man Prince Ice, Cameron Paul, all those guys, rest in peace. Like, they actually were playing the music, but it was still like a subset of R&B. And it wasn't until like, guys like King Tech and, Sway, when they came on the scene, and, they started out driving the van for the street team.
Oh, for real?
They were the street team. They were the street team for KMEL. So they drove the van, and in return for their hard internship work, they let them get that, midnight to 3 a.m.
Like
slot.
radio type
Yes.
of slot, right? Yeah. And that's where you get the gritty hip hop.
Yeah.
So were they responsible? They were responsible for bringing a lot of the like East Coast stuff
Yes.
there to the West.
Yeah. And I was a big fan. I was a fan first before I got involved in the music, but I was selling records, so like I had sort of arm's length connection to all these guys. And then when I got old enough, like after being in college and like I can drive everywhere, I could go to all these shows in San Francisco, meet up with guys like Sway, guys like Tech. So we all became friends. And that's how it all started.
That's crazy. So you're on the hip hop scene in the West Coast, and you build these relationships again, like I said. So then, what sparked the move out east?
I mean, I thought I wanted to be so I majored in engineering, and engineering is not very social.
Right?
Engineering is not very social, and it's mostly males. I didn't like that, and when I was younger, when I first came here, I didn't speak any English, so like I didn't have a social life. But once once my mouth started opening and I started cracking jokes,
Right.
I had a social life, but this wasn't it.
Right.
So I'm at a party school. There's girls everywhere, clubs everywhere. I started DJing at clubs, meeting people. I want to do something else. So I interned at I interned with some engineering groups. I interned with defense contractor, all that. But that wasn't my thing. So I decided to go to law school. LA law was popular back then. Blair Underwood, right? Blair Underwood was he was just clocking older women, right? Corbin Burson was clocking older women, right? So hey, I want to be a lawyer.
I want to do that. Right?
I want to wear a suit and be fly, right?
And what better place than DC to do this?
Yeah. So Georgetown was a good law school, and same thing with NYU. So I was weighing the options, and then Georgetown, when I came to visit, they said, it might be, because you're so entrepreneurial, it might be good for you to actually do something with our business school too, go for JD MBA, because they need, people like you that's into business, but wants to understand the legal process.
Right.
So I said, why not? I came here, I spent 4th of July here 1 year just to check out the scene. This was still back when Ritz and Chicago's and all that was popping. Chicago's was popping, shout out to my man DJ Paul Howard, he was still doing it back then. And it was type of thing where you would see guys in Sergio Tacchini and Lecoq Sportif suits, LS, everything was fly. So I came here and I'm I love this. And they were playing long versions of Earth, Wind and Fire on radio.
The 7-minute drink?
Yeah, and I mean, of course, later on in life, I ended up working with all these people, but you kidding me? You turn on the radio and Donnie Simpson's on radio.
Right.
Melvin Lindsay's on radio.
They were already legendary.
Yes, and they were on BET. They were on BET and they were on radio. So I kind of loved it here, right? And this was Chocolate City back then.
Yes, indeed.
So, made sense.
So you came out here. That's a good segue. And then, how did you grab onto the hip hop scene out here?
Here. So I tried to DJ, right? I came out here and I tried to DJ, but this is a big city compared to what I had back home, with the college and everything. Here, to be a DJ and to get any type of shot on radio, you gotta be really good or you gotta have a following. So, of course, I networked and I got to be friends with DJs. And one thing I realized was because I was in college, DJing back in California, I already had a lot of contacts at labels in New York.
Okay.
And then I also had retail contacts from way back when I was doing stuff.
Yeah.
So all these DJs, producers, record label people, I wanted to meet them.
Yeah, for sure.
So back then, again, every call was a long distance call.
Wasn't no, hey man.
No texting.
Yeah, right.
We had beepers.
Every call was a long.
We had SkyTel, right? But that was about it. So, I started going to New York every week. Just, hopping on a Greyhound or sneaking on a train. This is before all this TSA stuff, right?
Yeah.
You can have buddy passes, you can have tickets under somebody else's name.
All types of nonsense.
Anything goes.
Yeah.
So, while I was doing that, one of the people that I kind of, found out to be a hustler who's way more advanced than me was Puff.
Of course, right.
And Puff was at Howard.
He was at Howard, yeah.
So
was Kenny rocking with him at that time? Or
no, Kenny's much younger.
Right.
So Kenny's, Kenny came after us. So Puff, Harv, D-Dot, Gucci, all those guys, they were at Howard. So I'm on campus at Howard. I go to study at Georgetown, but I have no real friends at Georgetown. I go to Howard. I'm hanging out at Howard. And, it really felt like you're on the set of A Different World. Remember that show, Different World?
No doubt.
Hillman College?
That interview was crazy.
So that's what it was supposed to be based on, Howard and Hampton experience, right?
Right.
But in all reality, Debbie Allen went to Howard. There was all these Howard people. So that experience that they portrayed on TV was very much like what was going on at Howard at the time. go there, so much energy. And hip hop, that's the beginning of the golden era, right? So I'm there, and one thing that I'm more in tune with was new music, because these guys are undergrads. Most of them were undergrads. Puff had already left and like went to Uptown to like intern. Me being a little bit older, I was already 21. I already had a car. I'm already jetting back and forth. So I'm bringing records back from New York, and I'm giving it to all these kids, like kids that will play the record. And I'm getting involved with the Source magazine, because the guys are from here. Dave Mays and Matty C, they're all from here. So I called them up. I called them when they said they're looking for interns. I said, I can be your rap. Like you got to pay me something.
Right.
They said, well, we can't pay you, but we can send you like we can send you with magazines. We can link you up with events and companies that need people. So they're actually connecting me to some labels too.
Putting you in the mix, yeah.
So, I'm at New Music Seminar. I'm in New York, for CMJ, everything. And, this is when I met Clark. Clark Kent was, already doing his DJ contest, and I volunteered to help him at the show. Yeah. So, all those things, man, we're in New York, literally, every weekend, sleeping on people's floors, sleeping in hotel lobbies, whatever it takes. Just making friends and going to parties and getting free drinks and free, finger food, and that's how it was.
T-shirts, merchandise.
Yep, that's how it was. So I got started in that, and pretty soon they needed people to actually rep their brand, rep their record labels. And Tommy Boy was one of the first ones that came to me. My first break really was with PWL America, which was Diamond D. Diamond D and the Digging in the Crates. So I was doing that. I was doing Tommy Boy. I was doing Delicious Vinyl. So I was bringing Farside out here. And then one of the guys that put me on for Farside got a job at this new startup called Interscope Records in 1992. So he flies out here and he goes, I can't really meet these program directors because they don't understand what we're doing. But I got this kid who was on that Deep Cover soundtrack. Remember that Deep Cover soundtrack? And I'm like, yeah, with Lawrence Fishburne. That Snoop Dogg kid, we signed him. And the tape that he produced out of his backpack was The Chronic.
That's incredible.
You know what I'm saying?
That's incredible.
So I got put in charge of doing all the Mid-Atlantic promotions for The Chronic.
Right, so at the time it's like, here's The Chronic, here's this tape called The Chronic, and you listen to it and I'm sure you're like, this music is great, but now looking back at it, it's like,
it's a classic.
You had a diamond in your hand.
Yeah.
You didn't even know it at the time. You guys worked that though.
Yeah, well, no, we worked that. I mean, I worked Tupac's first record and that record together, and that was just a wild times in radio, because radio guys loved me, like all the older established gentlemen who ran like the music departments at at radio stations. They loved me because I'm there all the time. I'm not like all these other raps that are only there on record days. I'm there hanging out at nighttime with their nighttime jocks. I'm buying lunch for their street team guys, their interns, whoever. Like, I'm befriending them. I'm helping them buy sneakers, all that stuff. So literally one of the stations here, WKYS. They used to be at the NBC studios up here when it was owned by Skip Finley. It was over there on Nebraska Avenue, way back in the day, before Kathy bought the station, right? So I used to go up there because I lived down the street all the time hanging out. And one of the owner's daughters were also working in programming. And she was a hip hop head. So her best friend was Iron, DJ Iron. So we got together and conspired to do this weekend mix show, hip hop mix show, which was the first in this region, right? And of course, they played all my records. and that was it. Like, you know, I had the key, and it was on.
That's it. We could go way more in depth about the whole music thing, but we're gonna chill a little bit and come back and talk about the transition from music to sneakers. Cool?
Wow, yeah.
We'll be back.
All right.
Duh. All right, baby, we back, man. You saying I want to get to what we all here for. We're gonna talk some sneakers.
Well, I mean, what do you want to talk about? It's a long history, right?
Indeed, but first, well, let's not get too far, man. What do you think about this Shinju and this Saint Germain right here?
Dude, I'm so glad these guys came through. Obviously, like Shinju's that drinkers drink.
Cheers to that.
And then Saint Germain's is just easy, man. This is the stuff that I can drink all day if I didn't have to work.
Yeah, for sure. So, the sneaker game, man. The store itself, like not necessarily this location, but your old store. Like, what was the process leading up to you actually opening a physical store? Like, when did you say, you know what, boom, this is what I want to do?
Okay, so it wasn't like a eureka type moment where like I said we should open up a sneaker store. It was more like throughout my travels, in the music industry, and then I also consulted for a number of internet startups and file sharing companies. I've done it all. Like if it was something new and exciting, it kind of was on the forefront of it. And I also consulted for EA Sports for a long time.
Oh, word, okay.
So one of the projects that I did as a marketing person for EA was to create a crossover shoe with Nike to seed to influencers and celebrities.
Okay.
And it was my idea. I saw my guys over at Stussy doing it, and said like if Stussy's doing it with Nike and is big in Japan, like we should be doing it here. So, this is back when you didn't have to write so many memos and invoices and all that. So I think Nike made us 1,000 pairs of shoes for free.
Word.
Yeah, because it was an opportunity to get into the mind shares of people that they normally don't have access to, the budding sneaker head.
Marketing dollars.
Right. So we did that, and that was like a big phenomenon. So, I kept in touch with those guys. I worked on the video game integration of shoes, appearing inside NBA Live and things like that. I was brokering those types of relationships. So I already had very good relationship with all the sneaker companies.
Were you yourself a sneakerhead at that time?
I never like to call myself a sneakerhead because it's kind of corny, but I'm a collector.
Yeah, okay.
I'm a collector. I collect things. I collect watches. I collect different things. So but in my travels, or if I travel to Nike campus, or at one point I was a product placement guy for Reebok over at BT. So I did a lot of things where I had access to either free sneakers or sneakers that are not available to anybody. So I always had always fresh, always sort of exclusive collection. And at every music event, you always run into other guys that are into this, whether it's Clark Kent or Greg Street.
Yeah.
A lot of the radio guys, a lot of the music guys, Fat Joe, they're all into sneakers.
Big time.
My man Sean Pecca is over at Rock Nation, same thing. We always go buy sneakers. We always raid sneaker stores. So, when I come back to DC from these road trips, kids are always asking me yo, what's up with those? How can I get these or whatever? And I say, look, I need to have an outlet for these kids to have, access to sneakers, because it's a budding, phenomenon, right? And, I was approached by some local sneakerheads to open up a store. And at first I said, I'll back you up, and I'll be your connector for getting you introduced to, getting you introduced to brands, getting you introduced to designers, getting you access. I'm not gonna be financially responsible for it, and I certainly don't want to work at a brick and mortar business because, that's just painful.
Right.
So,
The irony.
so I did that. But just with any business, you start and you realize that the people who have dreams, they also don't have the financial means or they don't have a plan.
Common. Yeah.
So I ended up, signing on the dotted line with Nike to be financially responsible because it's my relationship that we're getting the account with, right? So my name's on that. My name's on the lease because, I'm the person with the business and all this established credit. My name's on everything. And, I have partners and, so-called partners and people that are co-founders that are not showing up to meetings and, calling in. So I just had to take the reign and run with it. Yeah.
That birth made you. Yeah, and back then you were the only sneaker boutique in Georgia.
Absolutely. I mean, I witnessed the rise of, guys that are friends of mine and, guys that I respect a lot in the industry, like Keith Hufnagel, who started Huff. I saw his store, becoming what it is. I've also seen Eddie and James do their thing with Undefeated. My mentor in retail business, my man Michael Brown out in San Francisco, he's another DJ that started a streetwear retail. And, True.
Oh yeah, I rock with True, yo.
Yeah.
I was, on the low, I was trying to get some either True or Accomplice to wear for this, but I just couldn't find the right piece. I was like, I know your connections back to the West Coast,
Yeah.
Peoples and everything.
Yeah, and I love the twins that own Accomplice too. They're really great guys. So you meet a lot of people in this business, but I started the business with the same kind of mindset as some of those guys. I just wanted to bring flavor, and DC didn't have anything, so we opened, and I think we might have been fifth or sixth sneaker boutique in the East Coast, because no, DC definitely first, but even in New York, Philly, they didn't have a lot. At the time, I think there was, before us, there was, obviously DQM, Dave's Quality Meat, Clientele, which was an offshoot of Supreme. This is before Kith was ever in the equation. You had Concepts. Bodega opened around the same time as us.
Oh, okay.
And Bodega was a consignment store in the beginning.
That's Bodega's the one in Boston, right?
Boston, and they're in LA also.
Okay, they're on the West Coast too.
Yeah. So, and then Commonwealth came and opened up after we opened. So there wasn't a lot of us, and outside of Philly, New York, Boston, there was nothing. So we brought that flavor, and it was a lot of learning, a lot of learning curve, because I never owned a brick and mortar business before. I owned since the record retail, but that was years ago. And to work on leases, work on paying for everything, and the level and the volume of inventory that you have to deal with is pretty intense.
Man, like we talked about earlier, you had 150 pairs of sneakers in here.
Yep.
And, that's just out here, on the floor.
And you have at least 15 pairs each for everything, so that just becomes 20,000 real quick, right?
Real quick. So, are there any parallels that you can identify between the music industry and the sneaker business?
It's sort of the same thing. You're if you're the first guy to introduce it to people, and you have it's just me having a vision for some of this, same as having a good ear.
Right.
Having a good ear makes you a good A&R, but also makes you a good programmer, and also makes you a great DJ, right? And same thing with this business. If you have a good eyes, that makes you a better designer, that makes you a better merchandiser, that makes you a better salesperson, and ultimately you can sort of translate your vision to your customers and make your customers understand what you're all about,
I mean, maybe, you're talking and I'm thinking it's offhand. your whole thing with Puma, like you doing the Puma thing. You was doing the Puma thing. I don't think anybody else is doing the Puma thing like that out here. You know what I'm saying? And they're pushing forward now. But you have Pumas in here because they're doing a lot of good things with their sneakers.
Yeah.
I think you identified that early on.
Yeah, I mean, also like some of these companies, like when they have CEOs and presidents and VPs that believe in causes, and especially in social causes, and it makes it kind of easier for you as a retailer to put your money into, trust your money into like what they're doing, because it's all going back to the community. And with their bandwidth and with their power to reach people, they can do much bigger things than I can do as a single person. Obviously, like when we hire people or when we work with some of the local kids, we try to be, we try to take on that mentor role, just because kids need that direction. It's like being here in DC is not like being in New York or being in LA where you have all the access in the world to learn. It's hard to learn here. So for us, like I just want to provide that forum for the kids to like learn from people who are doing it the right way. And the right way is the long way. There's nothing that's microwavable.
You got that right. Yeah, going to the last, man. You know what I'm saying? Start from the ground up, build your thing up.
Yeah.
Hard working. So let's get to this, man. I just want to talk about this. The current sneaker culture. I want to get your feelings about the resale game, the bots, the hype. You know what I'm saying? Those type of things in the game now. How do you feel about these things?
I mean, because of the culture that we're in, it's a very fast-moving culture, and hustle is appreciated, right? So obviously, there's a room for creative entrepreneurs, which are the resellers. I mean, resellers do very well because A, people sleep on stuff. B, people are lazy. They want things like spoon-fed and hand-delivered to them.
Yeah.
And C, because most people don't want to, waste time or put the time into developing relationships and, just having that connection.
I actually find joy in that. I don't understand why people wouldn't want to do that.
Well, it's a instant transaction culture, right?
Right.
And this generation, they just want to hit the button and be done with it. And, forget about it. Sometimes, like, they'll hit the button and forgot that they ever purchased.
Yeah, you're right about that.
And I hear that from, a lot of my contemporaries who have, like, stores in smaller markets, right? They rely on the internet. Like, honestly, I think a lot of those guys started their companies so they can, feed their fetish for certain sneakers. And then their business model is to pump their sneakers on the internet so that they can at least get their money back and keep growing, because they just don't have foot traffic like what we got here.
Right.
But what's happening is even places like DC, even in New York, people are getting lazy. They just want instant gratification. They want, if Off-White is the hottest shoe, they just want that Off-White.
Right.
They don't want nothing else.
And that's the hype.
That's the hype. That's the hype. And, as somebody who's been through everything, and a lot of my, friends, a lot of my contemporaries, a lot of my customers even, they'll complain. They're like, oh, the sneaker game's messed up, sneaker game's this, sneaker game's that. We allowed it to happen.
Right.
We allowed it to happen. There's no one else to blame but people who enjoy sneakers themselves. We allowed it to happen. So, we just have to do a better job telling the story. We just have to do a better job creating that emotional connection. Like what I'm here to do, and I'm not knocking on all these like stores that have multiple doors, but at least, make sure that your entity represents your personality and what that community is all about. So that way, at least when somebody walks into your door, I don't care if you have 150 stores or 300 stores, it's probably knock at the guys with the stripes, right? But they need to have a personality. They need to be able to relate. There's no real relating going on. It's become very transactional. And like if you're gonna come in here, look, ask for a shoe and leave, I don't have a relationship with you.
Right.
We just had a transaction. That's it, you know? Boom. That's why internet is beating all the brick and mortar stores.
Yeah, man. I mean, and so I guess that kind of ties in the whole resale thing and, you know, the less personal type of situation. The bots just snatching stuff up in milliseconds.
Yeah.
And the average person, you know, you want to go get a sneaker. I remember coming to Major across the street trying to get the Ben 23s. I think it was the 6s.
Oh, wow. Those are amazing.
I was in line. I was in line for the Bens, and the first person wore 8.5. The first person in line wore 8.5, 9, and that was my size. I went back home. That was it. You know what I'm saying? But I was there. You know what I mean? It's like
But the game has changed.
the game has changed.
So if you're the second guy in line and the first guy's wearing your size, you're like, oh, well, screw it. I'm going to get a 13 because those things demand, that size demands more money on StockX than,
all type of money.
yeah. And it's, you know, things like StockX that helps to sort of dumb down the audience, right? Because now instead of doing your research, doing your homework, as what we like to say, you know, now you can just go to StockX and find out what the current value is.
Yeah. It's crazy.
You know, and it's just like how Serato and all those automated music programs killed the art of DJing. It's the same thing. Like most DJs, you know, when I was coming up, and you know, even some of the veteran DJs like Kid Capri, Clark, Brucey B, all those guys will tell you, sometimes we used to dip the vinyl in the water to take the label off.
Word.
So that way, like some sucker DJs behind you, like looking at you, you know, looking at you,
Crazy. I never heard of that.
you know what I'm saying? Never.
So that's a nice segue.
And that's what's different about this generation of kids versus like the older generation. Older generation guys would never ask somebody like, yo, where you get those?
Ever. Don't know. Like we would, you know, but now we're more mature.
Right.
We're like, you know, if you see something dope, if you know you dope, you know, those joints is kind of heavy right there. You got. But back in the day, it was like,
Pause.
yeah.
You know what I'm
I'm not
saying?
saying nothing about what he got go up and go. And we didn't even have the internet to be able to look it up later on.
No.
It was just gone.
I mean, it feels like they have like a facial recognition of sneakers now. You know what I mean? Like they just scan the joint and they're like, oh yeah, that's it.
So what's your predictions, man, where this thing is going?
So I think, you know, in all honesty, I think because, you know, sneaker culture is getting bigger and bigger, I think we're going to hit a plateau where, you know, things are going to become very general. And like a general consumption of sneakers, whatever it is, like, you know, the names and the hype and the price is going to dictate like what's hot, and everything else is just going to flat out a little bit. But the specialty categories, I think, will become even more specialty as we go forward. Like it's sort of about like what more luxurious things that can you deliver? What more exclusive things can you deliver? What type of experience are you going to be able to accompany your sneaker buying experience? You know, so things like, are they playing the right music when I come into your store is going to play a key difference in whether they mess with you versus somebody else. You know, and also building the brand. Building the brand. I mean, I've always been a huge believer in building your retail brand to the strength where, you know, people have to take pride in buying product and Major over a Foot Locker or any of my competitors or, you know, contemporaries. So, you know, to me, there's a pride in carrying a bag with Major stamp on it. There's a pride in, like, you know, wearing something with the District of Columbia, you know, emblazoned all over it. You know, any of our hats, like, you know, they're exclusive. They're always limited to like 72, 144 pieces. You know, we try to deliver something exclusive so you can, at least guys with that attitude is like, you ain't up on this attitude?
Right. It's funny because the Souls is in, I came in with my, the patch same
Yeah,
hat,
yeah.
whatever. And 40 comes in, and he had the same hat on. And he went back to his car and put on another major hat. You know what I'm saying? He came back in, so it's pretty dope.
And that's a generational difference.
True indeed, true indeed.
Because the 16-year-olds are gonna be like, yo, you wearing that major patch hat?
I'm wearing it too.
Word.
Exactly.
No, or they Snapchat each other like, yo, this is a fit I'm wearing. Oh, you got the same fit. All right, bro.
Exactly.
Teamworks make the dream work, right?
Teamwork, baby. It's crazy. So, man, I always tell people, man, it's really the real American dream is to do what you love for a living. How does that feel for you? You know what I'm saying? I know you've been doing this for a long time.
Dog, it's a struggle every day.
Right.
It's a struggle to
You
wake
need
up.
to know that.
It's a struggle to wake up to check your, bank balance and worry about, how many checks you wrote,
Yeah.
who's going to be withdrawing from what, how much you owe Nike, how much you owe, Adidas, how much you owe Reebok, how much you owe Converse. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. There's, there's always like marketing, dollars and, marketing relationships at play. Because, I want to be able to tell your story in the best angle possible. So sometimes that involves like, me asking for help in terms of merchandising or POP or anything from, these brands. Like, Puma's very good at that. Like Puma gives us like pedestals and, backgrounds and all that. But, that's what you have to do. Like, you constantly have to worry about what your next move is. Because, it's a chess game. Like, you never sit back and relax and go like, oh, I made it, we good. The thing about this business, this business is, this shoe is not going to be hot forever. Like, we sell out of this, there's something that's waiting to take its place right here. So we just have to, keep it going.
This part, I like to reach out to my followers so they can pose questions. So I have a couple questions. The first one from a gentleman Joe Sampson. He asked, and we might have touched on this a little bit, but what was the moment in your career, in your music career, that you decided to monetize the marriage between sneakers and hip hop?
Interesting question. I mean, it wasn't so much like I wanted to monetize it. It was kind of like the thing that I was really passionate about and was really into was sneakers. And I remember this was like in '95. I was on the road between DC and Baltimore with Lil' Kim.
Okay.
And Kim being like the first female rapper, right? Reebok guys really wanted to put the 5411s on her, and dress her from head to toe. Like all her dancers, everybody would wear like Reebok sweats, white Reebok shoes, whatnot. And they were trying to get in touch with Kim. And a gentleman there who's a good friend of mine now by the name of Jonathan Matthews, he was running the urban marketing initiative for Reebok at the time. Waited for us at WKYS for like 4 hours until we showed up. So I met him and we started talking back and forth and found out that we both had gone to business school and we're into like culture and everything. He said, since you travel with all these rappers, how about if I hire you to place product on all these people? And I said, that's funny because when I was working with Steve Rifkin with Loud, we actually got a chance to visit Nike in 1992, and I pitched that same concept.
Word.
And they didn't want to do it because they were athletic performance.
That's crazy.
But now Reebok wants to do it,
And all of a sudden,
I'm down. So that's when, I was able to write my own orders, size runs. I learned how to work with size runs and figuring out people's sizes, learning how to do like head to toe dressing. So that's when I realized that there might be something in it for me, and this was also the same time when a lot of my friends were getting out of record business and getting into like sort of mainstream advertising or experiential. So, my friend Rob Stone, who owns the Fader magazine,
Oh, word, okay.
he had just started.
Everybody.
He had just started, you know what I mean? And he was getting sponsorships with different brands. A lot of my guys that were like graffiti writers and album illustrators, they were starting their own, brands. And, even like Tony Shelton, when he started Mecca USA, that was like the first urban brand, you know what I mean?
No joke.
And, Tony called me up and said like, yo, I want to send you some gear and, I want you to do some, help me with some events. So we go back like that. And that's when like, I just started realizing like, one, dressing these hip hop guys probably will be worth some money because they have such a, command over the audience. And then B, it's just a matter of time before sneakers become so mainstream that everybody's going to be wanting sneakers. Because before it was only for like really fashionable kids and your neighborhood drug dealers and ball players. The cool people. The coolest people. Yeah. So that's the way it was.
Word. That's a great answer, man. My second question is for my boy Dexter Frost, childhood friend, we grew up with each other. Can sneakers say something about a person's personality?
Used to. Just because, you literally bought what you like.
Yeah.
When I first started the store, the original Major in 2006, I think people were hyped on getting, exclusive shoes. But those exclusive shoes came like, once every blue moon, so you had to satisfy your thirst with some other stuff. And that meant that, you dig in the crates and you try to find like the, dopest looking shoe that you can put on, or, what way I used to do it in my travels, we go out and buy like, if I like certain shoe, I'll buy like 4 colors, right? And just keep them on ice. Keep them on ice. Just make everybody forget about it. 4 years later, boom.
Out of here.
Because whenever you have shoes like that, somebody is eventually going to come out with a T-shirt or something that will match up.
Perfectly, too. That's crazy.
So that's the way it was. But now, kids are going out there trying to match their personality to whatever's out there brand-wise and product-wise. So, kids take on that Kanye personality when they wear Yeezys, kids take on Drake personality when they wear OVOs, you know what I'm saying? Like,
And you can,
it's different.
I try to tell my son, like, oh man, we do something that no one else is doing. You know what I'm saying? Watch something different. You know what I mean? Instead of trying to chase behind. And he's slowly getting into that. So I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, it's different.
Man, this is fantastic. Like you said earlier, like I was saying, we could go for we could do a 6-part series, right?
Couple of bottles of these.
Couple bottles, and I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
Man, I really appreciate your time.
All right,
I want
man.
to shout out Wifey for holding down the store while we're doing this. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of people in here.
Yep.
It's a good time. It was a good turnout. And,
Yep.
Whiskey Kick, Brocky signing off. See y'all next time. Ducky, man.
Thank you.
It's all love,
Thank you,
brother.
Bucky.
Thanks, man. Thanks for doing
Appreciate it, man.
For the novelty.